Hey guys, welcome back to How to Roll Dice. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be doing a review and walkthrough of this game here, The Castles of Burgundy by Ravensburger. The Castles of Burgundy is a fun little game for 2 to 4 players that has those players taking on the roles of nobles or royals in 15th century Burgundy. In this game, you're going to be starting with an estate that has a lone castle on it, and you're going to be expanding that estate to include shipping routes and farmlands and mines and different buildings and sort of special locations that are going to give you benefits towards victory points. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most victory points is going to be the winner. This game is relatively easy to learn. It's pretty straightforward to understand the mechanics to get through the game. It's got a lot of replayability, but it does have one major downfall, and I'm going to sort of open with that right out of the gate because I feel like it's something that you need to know, because as soon as you show this game to your friends, it's going to hit them and you're going to have to be ready for it. So, looking at this box, you might notice that it's a little plain. It's a little beige. It's a little, it's burgundy actually, but it's got this brown and beige kind of muted palette going on. And it's by Ravensburger, and you're thinking, well, Ravensburger mostly make puzzles, right? So what's up with the game? It's actually a really good game. It's highly rated. BoardGameGeek.com, I believe, has it somewhere around the 15th in its list of highest rated games of all time, so that's really good. And then you start pulling the components out, and you look at the components, and you've got a mostly beige board and mostly beige player boards and tiles that, although they are colored, somehow feel beige, even though they're blue, green, black, beige, gray. They all kind of have this muted, washed out kind of meh color palette to them. And you look at the rule books and they're mostly beige and brown. And so the game just doesn't leap off the table like other games do. It doesn't have a lot of visual presentation to offer. And then you start to get into the quality of the components. You start to pick things up and feel them. And you kind of go, no, this is not good. Because the player boards are basically just thick paper. I guess you could maybe call it the lightest cardstock you could buy. Very flimsy wobbly. This board here, though it is proper game board material, is relatively small. It's something like a 17 by 11, so it's basically the size of a piece of legal paper. These tiles, which are the main component that you're going to be interacting with during the game, are thin cardboard, probably the thinnest cardboard I've ever interacted with in a highly rated game. Not quite, flexible cardboard, but just a step above something like a cereal box, so nothing amazing there. And again, there is no art to pull you in. There is no, luscious theme to enthrall you while you're playing through the game. You just kind of have to understand that it is what it is. It's mechanically sound. It plays well. It's just a little bland as far as color and component quality goes. But it is a good game. So let's get into what comes in the box. So first off, you've got this game board here. Like I said, it's about a 17 by 11 inch game board. That's good if you're looking for a small size playing area. It's got on it some different locations for tiles. You've got your goods tiles. You've got your actual building and farming and shipping tiles. You've got your bonus point tiles. You've got your victory point track around the outside. You've got your different marketplaces and your player order, which is also sort of the shipping track. I'll get into that later. Then you have your player boards. Your player boards look very similar to your main board. They're going to show each player their estate, which again is going to start with just one castle and spread out from there. You've got your goods tracker or your goods stacks where you're going to sort of collect goods and then sell them off. You've got a large section of pictograms that are going to remind you of how the different tiles in the game work. You have a section of storage spaces. That's where you're going to sort of gain tiles before you add them to your estate. And then you have some different places for the silverling tiles, which is the only money that you have in the game. Your worker tiles, which can be used to mess with your dice rolls a bit. And where you put your unused dice, because this is kind of an American game in the sense that there are dice involved. But how could I put this? This is the most German-American game I've ever come across. And I'll explain why that is. Moving on from the player boards, you have the tiles themselves. These represent your workers, your silverlings, the different types of spaces that you can build onto your estate. So you've got additional castles, farmlands, shipping, some knowledge spaces, which are sort of specials. This black market tile here is a mix of all the different other types of tiles, and I'll get into that. Your building tiles, your mines, and then your goods tiles, which are these square tiles here that represent the goods that you're going to collect and sell off. You've got these 2 rule books here. You've got one in English, one in French, both the same, so it's not like you need to read through both of them. If you speak both languages, then knock yourself out. Let me know if there's any rules differences. That'd be interesting. And then you've got some additional player boards, and that's because this game can be played in sort of a beginner mode where every player has the same exact estate layout. Those are going to be numbered 1 through 4. And then on the other side, you have sort of varied estate layouts. So the rules of the game don't change at all, but the layout of the spaces on your estate changes, and that's going to drastically change how you play the game from beginning to end. So I feel like that makes it a lot more interesting, a lot more unique on a player-to-player basis. So once you get past your first couple of games, or even your first game, assuming you're playing with the same group of people, I would flip over to the more randomized estate sides. It's just going to make the game more interesting. So getting into setup, how do you set up the game and get going? First off, you are going to give each player one player board, again, starting on the sides numbered 1 through 4 if it's your first game. Each player is also going to take a set of dice, 2 colored die. You have red, blue, black, and green. Those are going to be the dice that they take their actions with throughout the game. There's also a colored sort of circular chip marked 100 and 200 on its 2 sides. That's going to be to track whether or not you've made any full laps around the victory point track, which goes around the board numbered 0 through 99. That will happen on a relatively common basis because you gain victory points in this game like wildfire. It's not like, 2 or 3 turns go by before you gain 1. You're gaining 10 or 15, 20 points, in a given turn, depending on the action that you take. And that does sort of de-escalate as the game continues because you actually earn less victory points for similar actions that you would have earned more victory points for earlier in the game. Because as you get further into the game, it's easier to do big things because you've been playing for longer and you've had time to set things up. But I'll get onto that. So each player is going to get a player board. Each player is going to get a set of dice, 2 dice. Each player is going to get their tracker for whether or not they've done any laps on the victory point track. Each player is going to get 1 silverling, that's these little silverling tokens here, and place it onto the silverling space on their board. Each player is going to get 3 random goods tiles. There are, I believe, 6 different colors of goods tiles. Like color goods tiles can be stacked, and that matters because you only have 3 spaces for goods tiles, and you can't mix the colors. So you've got your starting 3. If they match, you can stack them together. If they don't, you're just going to place them on separate spaces. So you might have them all on 1. You might fill all 3 of your spaces with 1 each, depending on what colors you get at random. You're also going to notice that each one of those has a dice symbol or a die symbol on it, numbered 1 through 6. That has to do with how you sell them off. We'll get onto that in a minute. Each player is then going to receive a worker tile based off of what position they are in starting turn order. So everybody should take a die, roll off to see who's going to go first. Whoever rolls highest goes first. That player is going to receive 1 worker tile. The next player will receive 2 worker tiles. The next player would receive 3, and the last player would receive 4, assuming you're playing in a 4-player game. You're going to place those worker tiles onto your worker tile spot on your board. Lastly, you're going to place your actual player markers. So 1 is going to go on the 0 space on the victory point tracker. The other is going to go on the first space of this shipping lane here. And those are going to be stacked in turn order based off of that roll that you did at the beginning. So player 1 is going to be at the top of the stack, player 2 would be below them, player 3 would be below them, and player 4 would be at the bottom. Those are going to keep in mind, or allow you to keep in mind, the turn order and are going to shift around throughout the game based off of players placing shipping tiles, which we'll get onto in a minute. Last thing is that the starting player is going to be given this white die. So that is it for player setup. Moving on to the board, you're going to take some of the remaining goods tiles and you're going to place stacks of 5 tiles each face down on these 5 spaces across the top of the board, these sort of phase spaces marked A through E, A, B, C, D, E. So face down 5 per on those spaces. You're also then going to populate the bonus tile spaces on the board. These are in the upper right and upper left of the board, and they are synced with color. So you'll have 2 dark green, 2 beige, 2 blue, 2 light green, 2 gray, and 2 yellow. Those are also all going to have a large and a small tile. So place those out. Those can be earned through one of the ways of filling out your estate. I'll get onto that in a minute. And then you're going to fill all of the starting 6-sided tile spaces based off of the number of players that you have. So those spaces are going to be marked with a 2, 3, or 4. If you're playing a 2-player game, you only populate the 2s. If you're playing a 3-player game, you'll populate the 2s and 3s. And if you're playing a 4-player game, you'll populate all of them. Now, regardless of the number of players, you're always going to have some in the middle of the board here in the black tile spaces. So if you look at the layout of the board here, you have markets, or I believe they're properly called depots, numbered 1 through 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, marked with a die to show their number. In the middle of the board, you're going to have these black spaces, and that's the black depot or the black market. And again, those are going to be numbered 2 through 4, so only populate the ones that actually match the number of players that you have. All of the spaces in the regular markets or depots are going to be color-coded. The black market are all going to be sort of randomized because the black tiles have a random collection of other tile types. So you don't know what they're going to be until you actually place them. And once you're done with that, the board is set up, your players are set up, you're ready to begin the game. At the beginning of the game, you're going to take the first phase stack of goods, that's the A stack. You're going to flip it over and you're going to place those 5 tiles in the 5 round spaces below. And that's going to be how you sort of track what round you're in, because the game lasts exactly 25 rounds. It's 5 rounds per phase over 5 phases. And you can start to see how the rules even start to sound a little beige here. Oh, there are 5 phases, each is broken down into 5 rounds. And during a round, it starts to seem a little methodical and mechanical, but it is a good game, so stick with me. So, beginning of the game and beginning of each phase, you're going to take the leftmost phase stack, beginning of the game, it's going to be A, flip it over face up and place them onto the 5 round spaces below. You're then going to take the next round tile, or the next goods tile, from the top down, so if it's your first turn of the game, it's going to be the top one. You're going to roll the white dice, and that's going to be player 1. And they're going to place that goods tile into the market space of the number that was rolled. So you've got 1 through 6 shown here in dice. So if you rolled, for example, a 3, you would take that top tile and you would place it into the 3 market. And then you're ready to begin the game. Starting with player 1, you're going to pick up your 2 colored dice and you're going to roll those. Actually, each player can do this simultaneously because it won't matter. Those are going to be the actions that you can take during your turn, and you're going to take both of your actions. During your turn, there are 5 different things that you can do. 4 of them involve your dice. 3 of them involve your dice, 2 of them don't. So, the first one is going to be gaining a new tile. Looking out at the board, you're going to discard a die to gain a tile. Which tile can you gain? Well, it's based off the number on the die that you're discarding. So if you're discarding a 2, you can gain any tile from the 2 market, or the 2 depot. If you're discarding a 4, you can gain any tile from the 4 market. For now, let's ignore the black market. I'll get to that in a minute. So, based off the die that you're discarding, you gain a tile. Where does that tile go? It doesn't go directly into your estate. It goes into one of the 3 storage spaces at the bottom of your board. So all tiles are going to move into your storage and then into your estate using a separate action. So during your turn, first thing you can do, gain a tile based off the die you discard from the market matching the die. Second action you can do is place a tile from your storage onto your estate. Now, how can it be placed? Well, it's twofold. First off, the type of tile that you're placing needs to match the color space that you're placing it on. So if you're placing a shipping tile, which is blue, it has to be placed onto a shipping space, which is blue. Also, the die that you're discarding to take this action needs to match the number on the space that you're placing the tile on. So color needs to match and number needs to match. Third thing that matters is all tiles must be connected to your starting tile, which is going to be a green castle placed on any green castle space on your board, which is a dark green space. There are 3-ish greens in this game. There's a dark green, there's a middle green, and then there's a light green that's also kind of a yellow, so that can be a little misleading. I like to go with yellow because 2 greens is enough, dark and light. So you're going to place any new tile adjacent to any existing tile already in your estate. It has to match the color, and it has to match the number of the die that you are discarding. So those are your first 2 actions. From the board to your storage, from your storage to your estate. Third action that you can take is you can sell a goods stack on your player board. So those goods that you got at the beginning of the game and may have gotten as we go through the game, I'll go over how the different tiles work and you'll learn how you get new tiles for your goods stacks. But if you want to sell off one of those stacks of goods, you can discard a die. How do you know which stack you're selling off? Again, because the stacks can only be in like colors, and because all like colors show the same die number on them, the die that you're discarding lets you know which of your 3 stacks you can sell. When you sell a stack, you're going to flip it over and put it face down in your discarded stack, which is sort of this empty space here. That's so at the end of the game you know how many you've sold, and that will matter for some things. You're going to get 1 silverling, regardless of how many tiles you sell, and you're going to get a number of victory points equal to the number of tiles that you sold times the number of players. So in a 2-player game, your tiles are worth 2 each. In a 4-player game, they're worth 4 each. You get the point. Anytime you gain victory points in this game, immediately move your victory point marker up the track. That's so everybody knows where you are at any given time. One of the things that I don't like about the game, I tend to not like any game where you can always see who's winning, because if somebody starts to pull away and gain a huge lead, it starts to become discouraging for the other players. So anyways, that's your third action, sell a stack of goods. Now your fourth and your fifth action don't necessarily utilize die, though they do still count as an action. You can discard a die to gain 2 worker tiles. Doesn't matter what the number on the die is, you're always going to gain 2 worker tiles and place them onto your worker tile space. What are worker tiles for? Every time you discard a worker tile, you can increase or decrease the value on one of your die by 1. If you're on a 6 and you decrease, you go to a 5. If you increase, you go to a 1, so it rolls over. If you're on a 1 and you decrease, you roll back to a 6, so it's sort of like a loop. You can discard any number of worker tiles on a single die. So if you have a 6 and you need a 3, you can discard 3 tiles and you have a 3. So you can always kind of make it work so that you can buy or place the tile that you need to if you have enough workers to adjust the die. So again, first action, gain a tile from the board to your storage. Second action, place a tile from your storage to your estate. Third action is to sell a stack of goods based off the die that you discard to sell. Fourth action is going to be discard any die and gain 2 worker tiles. Last action is the only action that sort of counts as a bonus. You can still take 2 other normal actions and still take this action, and that is to discard 2 silverlings in order to buy any tile from the black market or the black depot. Just like any other time you gain a tile, that tile is going to go to your storage. It doesn't immediately go to your estate. That's good because, say for example, you needed a shipping tile and all of the shipping tiles from around the board are already purchased, but maybe there's one in the black market. You could go out there and get that one, and it kind of saves you the hassle of having to wait for the tiles to repopulate, which doesn't happen until the beginning of the next phase, not the next round. So, after we go around the board, each player has had their turn. They've used both of their dice to take actions. They've possibly taken a third action in the case that they might have bought something from the black market for 2 silverling. We go around one player at a time, taking both of your actions during your turn. And once we've gone around the table, we're going to then activate the next tile. So the player that was player 1 the player that is player 1, which is based off of the shipping track order, and I guess I'll get on that now. So tiles, right? Let's talk about what tiles do really quickly. So the castle tiles. If you place a castle tile, you immediately get to take 1 additional action, and you act as though you have a die, like an imaginary die, with any number on it. So basically you get a free action with whatever die you prefer. If you need a 2, it's a 2. If you need a 4, it's a 4, whatever you like. When you place a farmland, farmlands show animals on them. It might be chickens, it might be pigs, it might be cows. When you place a farmland, you're going to gain some victory points immediately based off the number of animals shown on that tile. However, if you are placing a tile showing animals that you already have in that same pasture, which is an area of light green on your board, if you are placing a tile with animals already in that pasture, you're actually going to score the total number of animals of that type. So say for example, on a previous turn, I'd placed a farming tile with 3 pigs on it. And then later, on another turn, I place another tile in that same pasture, that same region of light green, with 2 pigs on it. For the first tile, I'm going to gain 3 for the 3 pigs. For the second tile, which shows 2 pigs, I'm actually going to gain 5. 2 for the one I'm placing and 3 for the one that I already placed in that pasture, as long as it's the same animal type in the same pasture. If it's a separate pasture or it's a different animal type, you don't stack. Now, they don't need to be adjacent, just in the same pasture, so they can be split by other pieces. They just need to be in that same light green region. So that's why animals are cool. Immediate victory points that stack. Shipping tiles. When you place a shipping tile, you get 2 things. First off, you get to choose any one of the 6 markets, not the black market, and gain any goods tiles that have landed in that market from the sort of random roll at the beginning of every round. Those become yours. If there are any that you can't take because maybe you already have all 3 of your goods spaces filled and one of them is a color that you don't have, you simply leave it behind because you only have 3 spaces and you can only stack like colors. So you might run out of room. And you can't willy-nilly discard those. You have to sell them to make room. You can't just toss them to pick new ones up. So if there's one you can't take, you leave it behind. Second thing you get when you play a shipping tile is you get to move your turn order marker up 1 space on the shipping track here. So if there's an empty space ahead of you, you'll move into the empty space. If there was already a player piece there, you actually move on top of that player piece. And resolving turn order is forwardmost piece top down. So if you're the highest up and the forwardmost, you're going to be player 1, and then it works its way down and back for turn order. So it's not always going to be as simple as clockwise or counterclockwise. So those are the 2 things that you get for shipping. When you place a knowledge tile, all of these knowledge tiles have unique meanings or unique abilities. Those are detailed in the back of the rulebook. You might start to memorize them after a while because some have pretty good pictograms, but they're all basically unique. Then you have the black tiles in the middle of the board. Those are basically randomized versions of the other tiles that exist. You have these brown building tiles here. Building tiles are similar to special tiles, knowledge tiles, except there are lots of duplicates. I think there are 8 total different building tiles. They might earn you some immediate money when you place it. They might earn you some free worker tiles when you place it, but whatever they do, it's going to happen as soon as you place it. Unlike the knowledge tiles, which might not happen until the end of the round, the end of the phase, or even the end of the game. Lastly, you have these mining tiles here. These are the only things that for sure don't have an immediate effect. You place a mining tile, and then at the end of a phase, you'll gain 1 silverling for each mining tile on your estate, whether or not you placed it during that phase. So mining tiles are sort of money over time in the form of silverlings. So after you've completed each player's turn, you're going to go ahead and move on to the second round or the next round by having player 1, based off the shipping track, which may have shifted if anybody played a shipping tile, roll the white die as well as their colored die. Everybody else rolls their colored dice, and place that goods tile onto whichever mark it rolled out on that white dice. And then you're going to again go through your turn, taking 2 actions based off the dice that you have. You can gain a tile from the board to your storage. You can place from your storage to your estate. You can discard a die for 2 workers. You can discard a die to sell a stack of goods, or you can spend you can spend 2 silverlings to buy a tile from the black market to your storage. Once you've gone around 5 times, this goods stack is going to be empty, and you're going to begin the next phase. Now at that point, there's basically going to be no tiles left on the board because you don't repopulate tiles except in between phases. So these tiles are going to really start to dwindle by the time you get down to the bottom of the stack. You're then going to flip the next stack over, beginning the next phase, place those tiles out onto these 5 spaces, and begin the next round. In between, however, you will repopulate all of the 6-sided tile spaces based off the number of players again. So if it's a 2-player game, only the 2s, 3-player game, only the 3s, and 4, or not only the 3s, 2s and 3s, 4-player game, all of them. You're going to go around like this for a total of 25 rounds. 5 rounds per phase, 5 phases. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most victory points is going to win. Now, there are a couple of bonus ways to gain victory points. First off, if you are the first player to fill all of the tiles or all of the spaces on your estate of the same color, so say you fill all of your blues or all of your light greens, if you're the first player to do that, you're going to take the bonus tile, the larger bonus tile of that color. So say I'm the first player to fill all of my light greens, my farms. I'm going to take this light green farming tile, and that's going to let me know that I'm going to gain 5, 6, or 7 based off the number of players, 2, 3, or 4, 5, 6, or 7 victory points at the end of the game. If I'm the second player to do that, say somebody else had already filled all of their light tiles, but now I've done it, I'm going to get the smaller bonus tile. That's 2, 3, or 4 bonus victory points at the end of the game, again based off the number of players. Once 2 players have done that, there's no more bonus. Now there is sort of an interim bonus for doing that. If you fill all colored tiles in a region, doesn't even need to be all of that color. So say, for example, again, light green. Say I have 2 sections of light green on my board that aren't connected, and I fill one of them. Doesn't matter that the other one is still there. I get a bonus. That bonus is based off of 2 things. The number of tiles that were in that region, or the number of spaces in that region. There's a little grid here on your player board that shows for 1 tile spaces, and that's right, for filling in just a 1 tile region, you actually get a bonus of 1. If it's a 2 tile region, the bonus is 3. If it's a 3 tile region, the bonus is 6, and it scales up from there. Say, for example, you fill in an 8 space region, you actually get a bonus of 36 points. On top of that, anytime you gain one of those bonuses, you get a slight bonus. If you look at the sort of marker here underneath the different phase stacks, in phase 1, or A, you're going to get a bonus of 10 points on top of whatever you score from that grid. In phase 2, or B, you're going to get 8 points. In 3, or C, you're going to get 6, and then 4 in D, and 2 in E. So there's a small bonus on top of the grid that reduces as the game goes on. Once you've gone through all 25 rounds, placing tiles, scoring bonus tiles, getting bonuses from filling in regions, getting benefits from placing things like buildings and from farms, moving your player marker for turn order whenever you play a shipping tile, gaining any possible benefits from knowledge tiles and silverlings from mines and all of that great stuff, you're going to see who has won. Now there are a few additional small bonus points that you can get at the end of the game. For any unsold good tiles that you have in your goods stacks, you get 1 victory point. For every unspent silverling, you're going to get 1 victory point. For every 2 unused workers, you're going to get 1 victory point. And then you're basically going to add in any bonuses that you get from your knowledge tiles. A lot of those have benefits that stack up and you count them at the end of the game, like additional VP based off of number of farm animals or something like that. Whoever has the most victory at that point is the winner. If there is a tie, it's whoever has the most spaces on their estate covered. At that point, if it's still a tie, it's whoever went last in turn order that round or that phase is the winner. And that is the game. It's a relatively straightforward game. It sounds complicated, but because the actions that you're taking during your turn are pretty simple, I mean, there's only really 4 with a 5th bonus action that you can take if you have Silverling. Then on top of that, the fact that the buildings and all the other stuff are basically pictogram based and they're explained on your board, and you start to pick up what does what after just a few rounds. It's relatively straightforward to learn. It's obviously got a lot of replayability because your sheet could change, your estate layout could change, the randomization of the tiles coming out is going to change, the numbers on the dice that you roll, whether or not you get what you need when you need it, that's going to be randomized. Even where things land in the markets when you roll to see where your round goods tile goes, that's random. So it's definitely not a German game, but it has a German feel to it. Maybe it's all the beige, I'm not sure. The beige and the tiles and the grids. But getting into a quick review, because we are running low on time. Going into theme and immersion. I don't think the game is very thematic. Nothing about this makes me really feel like a noble building out my kingdom or my estate. It just kind of feels like trying to strategically place tiles in an almost Tetris grid-like formation to earn the most points by scoring combos. That's what it feels like. And because of that lack of theme, immersion, basically non-existent. So I'm going to give it a 0 for theme and immersion. It's just not that kind of game. It's more tactical and mechanical than it is thematic. Again, all the beige kind of hurts that as well. Moving on to cost versus quality. Believe it or not, this game is only, I want to say $35 or $40. It's really cheap as far as like highly rated board games go. And that does kind of counterbalance what's in the box, but what is in the box is really lame. If they ever do like a remaster of this game and they just go ham with like color and art and redesign, this will jump 5 points on Board Game Geek, I guarantee it, within like a year of that release. That would be amazing. But as it is, I'm gonna give it a 1 for cost versus quality, because even though it is extremely affordable, it is ugly. Moving on to ease of use. It's a very easy to use game in the sense that it's small and you can reach everything. But as far as the tiles go, it's a little finicky having to position these all on this board and then on your estate and sort of keep everything in its nice little tight hexagonal position. It's not bad, but it's not great. And then on top of that, there's a little bit of a bump factor. Granted, things are easily sort of repositioned because you can tell where they were based off color and stuff like that. But it can be a little finicky. So I'm going to give it a 1 instead of a 2 on ease of use. So not looking great so far. Moving on to, is it enjoyable? I think it's enjoyable. It's definitely got a Euro vibe to it. There's no direct player-to-player attacking. There's a little bit of blocking that you can do, but it's hard to tell what anybody's going for because there are so many open spaces on your estate that you could be trying to fill at any given time. It's hard to really strategize against your opponent. You're building your own estate. You just have to focus on what you're doing. So I'll give it a 2 for enjoyable. Really not a lot to dislike about it once you get past the look of it. And then lastly, is it teachable? Yeah, it's pretty teachable. It really doesn't have that steep of a learning curve. Once you get a vibe for the pictograms, and once you start to figure out exactly what tiles do what and how you can use that to your advantage in what order, it's not too bad. So I'd give it a 2 for teachable. So going back down the list, we have a 0 for theme and immersion. We have a 1 for cost versus quality. We have a 1 for ease of use, so we're at a 2. We have a 2 for enjoyable, and we have a 2 for teachable. So we're looking at a 6 out of 10 for Castles of Burgundy. Now I know I said at the beginning that this is a good game, and I will stand by that. It's a good game. Whether or not it's the right game for you is why it comes in at a 6, because I could absolutely see somebody walking away from this because of how it looks. I can see somebody walking away from it because of how it's built as far as components go. I could see somebody walking away from it because of how mechanical and lacking of theme and immersion it is. So it's kind of got a lot against it that if you're not in the mood, you're gonna look at it and go, not today. And I understand that. But as far as like a well-designed game that plays good and is fun if you're in the right mindset for it, and you're looking for something a little more strategical, tactical, play your own kind of board, Euro thing, then it's going to work for you. So 6 out of 10, Castles of Burgundy. Give it a shot if you haven't yet, if you think it's something that you might be into. I hope you guys have enjoyed this review. If you have, please go down below and subscribe so that I know you did and that I will continue to produce things like this that you will enjoy. If you have time, leave a like or a dislike and maybe even leave a comment. We can have a little chit chat and discuss things like castles and Burgundy and the color beige. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.